We'll take questions as they go. Let me note you, and then are there other people? 2, 3, sharp.
Stefan Stillman from SABC TV News. You say that you will be writing to the NPA head, but really, do you have any confidence that he will follow through and actually prosecute, considering his history in other high-profile matters? If you think of the Pravin Gordhan and you think of the state capture matters that they are allegedly sitting on. So, do you have any hope that he will follow through?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Alex Mitchell from News 24.
Sure.
Mr. Maimane, you keep reiterating 783 charges, but as per the last charge sheet, it was only 18 charges relating to 700 odd payments.
Counts.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you could maybe just give us some clarity on that.
Sure, Alex.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. Just to add on to my colleague's question about
Which colleague?
confidence from the SABC about confidence in Sean Abrams. What would you do? Would you go to court if Mr. Abrams doesn't respond to you within the 10-day time frame that you've given him?
I'll take some, and then James will ultimately, especially on the Sean Abrams matter. Our view simply is to say that if he fails to act in this instance, he's actually going against a court judgment. In our view, the charges stand. Because if the fundamental decision to drop the charges was irrational, it goes to say that then the charges stand, as the Gauteng North High Court is. So, in writing to him, we are putting him on terms. And he must understand now that we are not asking him to consider the matter, we are asking him to do his job, which is to prosecute. That's the job that he must be doing. And if he fails to do that, he will be it has already been proven that his predecessors acted irrationally. He can't add to the matter. And so we will take whatever action we need to take against him. But this is an opportunity for him to prove his fitness to hold office and not do irrational things. And then to the second question, so the confidence doesn't come out of, it's my opinion, it's my pressure on him. It's the fact that there's a court process now that's been followed that actually compels him to do his job. The 18, look, it could be one count. These are 783 counts. Corruption is corruption. Even if it was just one charge, still corruption. You can't sit here today and we try and enumerate. You know, I use the example, if I go through gantries here in Gauteng and they want to charge me, they must charge me for each count that I've gone through a gantry. So they add that up. But the one charge might be collectively that, in fact, I may have failed to pay, whatever the case might be. We think in this instance the charges relate to corruption, racketeering. As President Mbeki said, it's a generally corrupt relationship with Shabir Sheikh. And there are multiple counts in this issue, 783 to be exact. So we think Jacob Zuma, in some ways, even if it was just one charge, we think a charge of corruption must be prosecuted regardless of who you are.
Yeah, the question of our confidence in the National Prosecuting Authority. I think Advocate Abrams will be in a very difficult position if he chooses not to proceed with the prosecution and to proceed with it rapidly, because I'd like to draw your attention to paragraph 92 of the judgment that was delivered by the SCA today, and it refers to the National Prosecuting Authority, and it says, it beggars belief that the present regime at the NPA, that is Advocate Abrams, on its own version of events, saw fit to defend Mr. Moshe's decision as being rational. For all these reasons, I can find no fault with the reasoning and conclusion of the court below that the decision to discontinue the prosecution was irrational and liable to be set aside. A question one might rightly ask is why it took so long to come to the realization at the 11th hour that the case for both the NPA and President Zuma had no merit. In other words, the Supreme Court of Appeal is saying that the NPA has delayed this matter obstructively, and if it then starts delaying it any further, we will go back to court, refer the court to this particular paragraph in the judgment, and ask the court to compel Advocate Abrams to take the necessary action.
Let me take the last round. I'm sure we've covered a lot. Sipo, you're going for round 2. Nice, the SABC, my sister. And then Honorable said there, then I think that covers everybody, no? Ungathi sikulibele.
I'll take the last one.
As uthi funeka etrongweni.
So, Olivia Palaipila from Jacaranda FM News. So the ANC just released a statement saying this is just about Zuma and the NPA and not about them. Can we absolve them from any of this?
Great question. Well, thank you. I recognize.
Mr. Maimane, some would, I'm from Power News, head of Power News. Some would argue that Abrams has already shown his hand, and being part of processes also to get us to where we are. What confidence then do you have that if you get your way, that he does appear in court, that they actually do a damn good job of it?
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you point out too, all along there's been a political solution being sought here.
Sipo, and then we'll take the last one.
Yeah, just a quick one. You mentioned, do you expect further challenges from the president, and also, do you think that this is perhaps this ruins the grounds for him to be recalled?
Mine is maybe a bit preemptive, but what would you consider a further delay with regards to Sean Abrams' response to your writing? Are we likely to, would you ideally likely to see the president appear in court while he is the president of the ANC? So I'm trying to find out if you're hoping this would happen before December. How soon? What are the time frames that we're speaking about here that you as the DA are likely to see this thing?
Well, I'll take a few and then we'll get on from there. I think I raised your question as a great one because I think sometimes people like to assume that Zuma acts independent here. We've often lamented this issue of state capture. And we say state capture is by the Guptas. It's not by the Guptas. The ANC set itself out to capture the levers of power. That was their mandate. Jacob Zuma executed against that mandate and abused his power as president to appoint somebody who they knew would not prosecute him. It's become a revolving door in the National Prosecuting Authority where people are appointed not because they want to serve the people of South Africa, but they're appointed on the basis of saying that they will serve, firstly, the president and serve the ANC. The policy of cadre deployment was never just Jacob Zuma's. It was a policy of the ANC. And these are the full effects of what happens when you put cadre deployment. When you pick people whose loyalty isn't first to the Constitution and their oath of office, but rather to saying to their political principles. Now, from time to time, we've had South Africans who were bold, who were brave, who stood up. The former public protector is an example of such. Now, in this instance, we are giving Sean Abrams to say, don't tether yourself to this issue. Separate yourself and prove that you are not Sean the sheep, that in fact you want to protect your oath of office, which is compelled and is derived from the very essence of the rule of law in this country. Therefore, our call is that the ANC statement I read, because it takes you 30 seconds to read that. It says that, no, it wants to separate itself. No. If they are honorable people and they want to see the rule of law, they must not treat the president of the ANC as if he's above the law or above the Constitution. He is subject to any law. Exemplified by, even when we asked Praveen Godan the previous question, which is the president exempt from tax? No, the president is the same as anybody else. He must be subjected to the same laws as any citizen. And in this instance, I would have expected the ANC, if they recognize that the constitution reigns supreme in this country, that in fact the rule of law must stand, should have been the first to say, if anybody is being found against, they must go face the full prosecution. But they didn't, because they are complicit in the project of state capture. The Guptas only captured Jacob Zuma, who through the ANC has captured the state. And this begins the journey towards undoing that. That's why we maintain South Africans need a new beginning. There's been a collective effort to capture the state. If we're going to free it, it's not just Jacob Zuma, we must free South Africa of all of this capture that was driven by the ANC. So it is a project that is important for the people of this country, because today is the case in the NPA, but believe you me, Zuma has had many disciples who have learned this issue from him, whether it's Brian Molefe, whether it's other people. They all come from a history of people who use state resources to obfuscate legal processes. We are simply here to call to say, if we want to restore institutional democracy, let us charge Jacob Zuma, let him face the case. The timing could not be paramount. He's not absolved because he's in office. He must stand and go to a court. So my timing is, Shaun Abrahams must respond within the next 10 days, and we must serve Jacob Zuma with a case. Because we simply refuse that he must wait until he's after the president. Otherwise, we are also complicit in an exercise of finding a political solution. Jacob Zuma must face it, and if he's criminally charged and prosecuted, it must be done as a matter of urgency. South Africans we've wasted 8 years on this issue. We can't delay any further. If we're serious about justice, let us demonstrate it now, when Jacob Zuma needs to face prosecution now, because he's delayed it while he was president. He must face criminal prosecution while he's president.
Thank you. Yeah. The question about what could go wrong, well, of course, the National Prosecuting Authority could put a junior prosecutor from the traffic court in charge of this case and make sure that it founders on that basis. But I think that this case has engendered so much publicity and so much attention that it would be seriously irresponsible of the NPA not to treat it with the seriousness that it deserves. And certainly we will be watching very closely who is put in charge of this case, because many of the original prosecuting team are still available. We understand the evidence is still available, so there's no reason why the case can't go ahead. As far as further challenges are concerned, there's obviously the possibility that the President could take this matter to the Constitutional Court, and certainly it does have certain constitutional elements to it, but it's going to be very difficult for the President to sustain a challenge to the judgment, since his legal team in the SCA effectively conceded that the decision to drop the prosecution was in fact irrational. Therefore, it's a little difficult to know what challenge he could mount in the Constitutional Court. Whether he's going to be recalled or not is a matter that is beyond both Mmusi and my competence. That is a decision that the ANC needs to make. They must in due course make that decision. As far as the time frames are concerned, we would expect the prosecution to start as soon as possible, and certainly before the elective conference. The delays that are possible would be that Advocate Abrahams decides that he needs to entertain the representations before the charges are formally put to Jacob Zuma. Our argument is the court case is very clear. The charges are not reinstated. They are as they were before the irrational decision to withdraw them. They are in place. That Jacob Zuma must be given a court date. He must appear in a court. He must be served with the indictment, and only then should the National Prosecuting Authority consider any representations. And as Mmusi has said, the NPA already considered representations and rejected those representations at the time. So it's very difficult to know on the basis of what those representations could be based, bearing in mind that they're the same charges that were put to him some 8.5 years ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time, and in simple terms, we will see Jacob Zuma in court where he faces criminal prosecution. Thanks.
Just